Welcome to the Fantasy Formula One podcast, where we use fake money to buy real F1 race teams to win imaginary points.
Dude, that was perfect. You just don't doubt yourself,
I will
man.
not. I need that confidence. Confidence is key in this
That
game.
was by far the best, though. We're getting it.
We are back, and we're back using video.
Yeah.
Again, so thank you for bearing with us through all the technical issues, and so we were able to get this new camera set up. And last week I was solo in the UP. Got to whisper a podcast episode sitting in the hotel room, which we'll get to all that here in a minute.
Oh,
but
that I watched a couple of those. It definitely looked like a hostage situation.
It did,
where
right? I didn't think.
Like, I think I can get away.
I think I can
you
do it.
need to send help.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Here's the newspaper for today.
And for those of you non-Michiganders, the UP is the Upper Peninsula, so you're like right in that northern Michigan, Minnesota.
Yeah.
It's cold most of the time area.
Yeah, my family and I went up there camping, and we had so I missed the race because we were in the woods.
Yeah.
And then as soon as we get back to civilization, we stayed in a hotel, and I caught up on the race, and I was like, oh my gosh.
And of course, it was this week.
It was this week.
You come
right?
back and you're like, oh my God.
What happened? You go up with the cell phones blowing up, and I was like, oh man, here we go. So the only time, because the baby was really like tired from, again, when you're at 50 whatever latitude, it stays light for a very long time.
Oh yeah.
And so the baby I have a 1-year-old, and she had a horrible time getting to sleep. And then we were camping and all that, so it was just really rough for her. So when I recorded the podcast, my wife and the baby were both still asleep in the other room. I snuck out, and my voice carries.
Okay.
So I had the microphone. I set up one of these cameras, and I'm like, all right, guys, like, here's what's going on.
Yeah.
I was so excited. and then I listened to it. I'm like, in my headset, I'm like, okay, no, this is good. This is fine. Published it. And then once it was all going and everything, and I actually went and kind of followed up a little bit, I'm like, yeah, with like the wall behind me and all of that, I was like, I could have picked a different background. But at the moment, I was like, no, it looks great. Let's just do it. And then as soon as the baby woke up and we continued on with the day, I was like, well, I either not publish it or I do,
right, with
just the wall. And so there we go. And that's actually a perfect segue into some of the comments we've received on it. And one was, where'd it go? It was pretty funny. Why is this man talking with Matt Damon's voice? Which I've been compared to Matt Damon like since my youth.
Are you serious?
I'm serious. Like,
Me
especially
too.
when I shaved my head before I went overseas. I shaved my head and I looked like was it Elysium? Matt Damon in like Elysium.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. See, I used to get Matt Damon comparisons in high school.
See,
so like when he was first doing like the first Jason Bourne movies.
I can see that.
Minus the muscle mass. I used to get that all the time.
Right.
So like, yeah, we are different eras of Matt Damon.
Hey, I'll take it.
Yeah.
I'll take it. And so
completely unrelated. Have you seen that Air Jordan movie?
Yes.
Pretty
super
solid.
Good.
Like,
I think they did a good job with it.
They did, and it was interesting how they. I'm sorry, this is way off.
That's
topic.
okay. Welcome back to the show, everybody. There you go.
But like, for a movie that ultimately like no one's gonna die,
yeah,
they really did a good job of making it feel like there was a sense of stakes.
Absolutely.
So highly recommend. It has nothing to do with F1, but go watch it. I think it's
absolutely.
I think it's on Hulu, right? Hulu
I think so. We watched it on Amazon.
It's an Amazon Prime.
Is it
movie.
okay?
Yep.
Cool.
So.
Yeah, so no, definitely watch that. You remember where I put the cameras now. There it is. Definitely watch that. So, yep, I have Matt Damon's voice, which is cool. And next one is George Russell and Mercedes are doing better than Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes. That is true. So what they're saying by that is if we look at the
cumulative points, so Mercedes right now is cumulative, was it 545 right now? I'm on the wrong page. Now, of course, as he's finding it up here,
yeah.
Of course, you have to look at everything prior to Silverstone because
that's true.
Because if you had Russell on your team like I did, he netted you -9 points.
Yeah.
Again, this is not a prospect or suspect issue.
Nope.
You know, this is one of those act of God moments.
He had a car issue. He had a cooling issue. They literally like, hey, dude, basically your radiator, and we would understand is, hey, your radiator's gone.
Yeah,
get in here.
He ruined my team. I'm not taking him off the team.
No, keeping him on there hardcore. Yeah. Absolutely. And his price went down by $500,000. So
that's great. Snag him now. Yeah.
So George Russell has brought us in 209 points. And let me go to the fastest way I know to look at this stuff. And value, there's George Russell at 209, Lewis Hamilton's 221.
But as of this week.
As of this week. So as soon as he had stayed in and George Russell had won, or call it P2, then they'd be neck and neck.
So commenter, you are correct as of the time of that comment.
Absolutely. And this does go to me, so like with Lewis Hamilton, if Lewis Hamilton is worth $22.8 million and George Russell's worth $20.9, do I think Lewis Hamilton could leapfrog Russell and start overall taking more points?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. I think he's a 7-time world champion. Like, he can do it. George Russell, I think, got everything together sooner.
Sure.
So right now I feel like, hey, man, I can only afford George Russell. I can't afford Lewis Hamilton. Get it, run with it. I have George Russell as the lead driver on a couple of my teams.
Yeah. Oh, and and that's the interesting thing too. I think who's the guy from the guy from Top Gear, the British version, not the crappy US version. Anyway, he was being interviewed before the race, and they're like, "Who do you think's going to win?" And he's like, "Well, it's supposed to rain, so it's going to be one of the drivers with a lot of experience." And lo and behold,
yeah, there you go, because they could figure it out.
So yeah, no, I think George Russell is totally capable.
Mm-hmm.
I think Hamilton is Hamilton, and it's cool to see him back on top again
for sure.
But yeah, no, I don't think he could go wrong with either Mercedes driver.
No, right now I think they're both looking really strong. Then George Russell, okay, cool. Here, Fantasy Formula One podcast ASMR Super Dad Edition. Which I had not gonna lie, I had to look that one up, and I guess it is.
I'll take it.
Yeah, to say hello. Here's what's going on. I wasn't trying to have that be what was going on. I was literally trying not to wake up my child. Yeah. But I'll take it. Hey, maybe we can have a Fantasy Formula One podcast after dark where it's like, are you trying to sleep? Do you want to hear about Formula One?
Yeah, man.
What's going on with their engines?
Do you like if we ever do t-shirts? That's got to be a t-shirt.
Absolutely. Numbers say Lewis is the GOAT, so he is the GOAT until someone beats his record.
Okay, so we'll be talking, I guess, in a decade or more.
Yeah, and it's.
I mean, you're not wrong. I mean,
you're absolutely wrong.
Yeah,
you're absolutely right. I'm sorry. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
This is his 104th win, which is insane. This is his 9th at Silverstone, which is its own crazy record.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, from a pure numbers and performance standpoint, I mean, you look at Nico Hülkenberg, who is a respectable driver who's been around for 10 plus years in F1, which is an eternity, and he does not have a single podium.
Yeah.
Is
it podium? Yeah, I think so. I have to look. Maybe he has a podium. He doesn't have a win.
Correct.
So
I don't think he does. So to be that prolific, and that successful over his career, no argument there.
And I will go, and we're kind of getting into the next one. The next comment, but actually, I'll go and get to the next comment before I spoil it.
But actually, staying on that point, though, you're right. However, in the world of fantasy, which is the ultimate fair weather fan element of the sport, like you can't get attached to anyone.
No,
and,
that's a good point.
And we're going to talk more about that when we compare Mercedes and Ferrari. Like, do you keep Ferrari over Mercedes at this point? That's something we can discuss at length here in a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. But no, you're absolutely right. As soon as somebody did really well forever and ever, and now they're not, like, you win in fantasy Formula One by knowing when to, using Lewis Hamilton as an example, when to cycle off of Hamilton, to let him drop like a stock, and then as soon as he starts climbing again, to get back on him and ride his success for your fantasy F1 team. Because remember, this is all about fantasy Formula One.
Yeah,
we'll gladly talk about the race itself, but in the end, who's getting you points? And that's what matters.
And as I learn more about this world that, again, I was completely oblivious to before February of this year, I don't think I've ever come across something that is more, what have you done for me lately?
Right.
It's every week. Every week your job security is completely on the line.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. And like, as soon as they're like, oh, he had a bad race, I feel bad, because you know what the information that reaches us is only a fraction of what's actually out there.
Oh,
so can you imagine being the driver, be like, oh man, I raced against Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton, didn't beat them. Maybe I'm going to get fired before the next race.
Right.
Like, oh, good gosh. So the next comment, and this one's a little bit long. So not really deserving. Yes, Hamilton did pretty much everything right, and he deserves this long overdue win. But the fact is that Max almost won there, and the third fastest car is insane. The McLaren should have won easily, but Norris screwed up, and I'm pretty sure they robbed Piastri for his first victory by not double stacking. Max has shown that he doesn't need the fastest car on the grid to become WDC. I'm not sure what WDC means. Maybe a better teammate would help him out. Lots to unpack there.
Yeah.
So some of that commentary is just parroted from the commentary that they have on F1, which is fine. It's what I listen to as well. Like, he's absolutely right.
You're not wrong. Strategy absolutely matters.
Absolutely. And as soon as for this race, for anybody who didn't watch the race, when the rains came, the dominant strategy ended up being to double stack the cars, to have both cars go in the pits, which you normally don't because you have to have one weight. And that ended up being the right strategy, and that's what Mercedes did. As soon as McLaren pitted their race leader and sent Piastri around for one more lap, the rain really came in, and Lando Norris did his pit stop and basically caught up with Piastri because Piastri was going so slow. Otherwise, he'd have to, and even then, he was like slipping and sliding all over the place. So that's what he's talking about with double stacking.
Yep.
If they had double stacked the McLarens, yes, it's very possible that they would have done a lot better. Or the wind could have blown a few degrees one direction, and the Piastri thing ended up working out great. Or the rains could have waited for literally 90 seconds, and it would have been a totally different race. So, not wrong.
But that leads into a whole sub-discussion of how is a chosen constructor prioritizing one driver over the other, and you go McLaren, you can't go wrong necessarily, but how much more valuable is it to have Norris as opposed to Piastri?
Yeah.
Because I have no doubt in Piastri's ability as a driver, but is he getting the same priority and opportunity and treatment within that McLaren team as Lando is? And how much is that difference in treatment worth from a dollar perspective?
And I would love to get a no-kidding like F1 strategist on the show. So if you're an F1 strategist and you like to be on the show, but because a lot of times it seems to me from the armchair is that it's the leader goes with the one that's ahead, goes more the sure thing. The second car will take the gamble.
Yep.
And where in races you see it where like the second car will go and try and do the undercut or the overcut, and the lead car will kind of go ahead and keep going. But when you have two cars that are back to back like that, it could have easily worked out the other way. But I kind of feel, to your point, that they're trying to get Norris the win, and having Piastri trying to do the overcut or the undercut, which I don't know if that's 100% true. Let's see, where are they at in the rankings? I don't want to navigate too far away from this, but where are the Drivers Hall of Fame? We're perusing around on the F1 website in case you're curious about what are these guys doing. So here we go. So right now, okay. And so that's probably why right there. Oscar Piastri has 124 points. Lando Norris has 171. Max Verstappen has 255.
Is this fantasy points or is this?
No, this is actual F1 points. Driver standings. Yeah. So Oscar Piastri is 5th. Lando Norris is 2nd.
That was a dumb question. I'm sorry.
What?
If I had thought about it more, I wouldn't have asked.
Oh, no, you're fine.
Of course.
But it's good to specify because they don't see I'm not recording the screen. So,
gotcha.
So for this, they're like, okay, let's go ahead and have, Norris be the primary and have the second driver be the to try the offset, the overshoot, the undercut, the overcut, stay out there one more lap, things like that.
I gotcha.
But then that does bring us into another interesting question that we'll get to eventually, but I'll go ahead and jump us to the top, is Mercedes versus Ferrari.
Right.
Because they don't have neither one of those teams seem to have a dominant driver, have a number one, number two driver. You can argue Hamilton and Russell's number two, and you can argue like Leclerc and Sainz number two. But performance-wise, like Leclerc is 4 points over Sainz.
But that's 4 points.
That's 4 points
past the halfway point in the season.
Yeah.
And there's some rivalry there with Sainz on his way out. He's racing for himself. That's a bizarre dynamic as well.
Yeah. And Russell has 111 points in the actual championship, and Lewis Hamilton has 110.
Right.
So again, there's not really one driver that's in quotes better or in quotes the number one driver.
Sure.
Obviously, Hamilton probably is.
And throughout the season, again, Silverstone notwithstanding, Russell has generally placed above Hamilton.
Yeah.
So
yeah, he has.
It's interesting, but with these upgrades to the cars and seeing how much more level of a playing field we're on now between McLaren and Red Bull and Mercedes, Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see who shakes out there.
Yeah, and I'm kind of, and this is my one, getting into the fantasy team build. Do we want to talk anything else about the race? We're going to always be referring back to it, but really the weather was the huge factor. The strategy being called from the pit wall, that the pit wall, the strategists, the people not behind the wheel.
Yeah,
they're the ones who really made or broke this race because of the weather.
Yeah, let's look back at the race results one more time, because I think P6 was another interesting one. We've got
P6 with Nico Hulkenberg.
This is his second second P6 in a row.
Uh-huh.
Dude's driving.
Dude, he is, and you can't not stand up and salute that. And that's actually one of the comments that I was going to say for later is, where is it? I don't know where it went, but basically it was like, hey, I'm not taking, Hulkenberg's here to stay on my fantasy team.
Yeah.
Paraphrasing. And he should, because
for sure.
He's pulling in solid points.
Yeah.
And especially with that cost versus risk versus reward, Haas as a team is stepping up there.
Yeah.
Now it's no longer a man, are they at the back or not? Now it's a, hey, how are they doing? So qualifying, where'd they qualify? So yeah, Nico Hulkenberg qualified 6th. And his teammate qualified 17th. So Kevin Magnussen didn't make it out of Q1, but his teammate made it into Q2.
Yeah.
Right? And then the starting grid, stop.
And again, from a fantasy perspective, if you see Nico Hulkenberg in P6, that to me is
huge points.
I was going to say that to me is a red flag.
Oh, that's a good point.
Just because he is typically one of those lower tier, lower cost drivers, and so I'm thinking, well, that's great. He made it to made it up to P6, but that means throughout the race he's going to be getting passed and passed and passed, and or he's going to be in a tight grouping right off the bat and potentially crash out. But he kept it.
He did.
That's the thing.
He did.
That's a tribute to him as a driver, and he is. That to me says, regardless of where he starts on the grid, he is as little of a liability as you can have.
Absolutely. That's a great way to put it. He's pretty much the minimal liability that you can have. And for anybody who's unfamiliar with the podcast or what we're talking about, a lot of the, in quote, you have your drivers who normally finish in the top 10, and then you have your drivers that normally finish in the bottom 10.
Yep.
And the issue is, as soon as if you place behind where you started, that gives you negative points. If you place above where you started, that gives you positive points. So as soon as you have drivers that will qualify in the in the position 17, 18, 19, 20, but they finish 10, 11, 12, 13, you'll get some points from them. As soon as you qualify P6 and finish P16, that gives you negative 10 points, and that's not what you want. And so a lot of the Haas's, the V-Carbs, the Williams, the stuff like that, as soon as they have a great qualifying, you don't really want that. You want them to finish better than they qualify, not qualify better than they finish.
Yeah.
And so to bring it full circle back to what we were talking about, the fact that Nico Hulkenberg is qualifying and finishing in the same spot in the points, that's huge.
Super exciting. And, and again, this is where, strictly from an F1 perspective, it kind of breaks my heart, because I'm kind of going, oh, Haas, you're having your day in the sun here.
Right.
And next season, your team is going to look completely different, because Hulkenberg's going to kick Sauber. They're going to be Team Audi at that point. And I know they signed Ollie Behrman. Yeah. So there's still that one open spot. I know they were talking about pursuing is it Alexander Ocon? Is that his first name? I think they were pursuing Ocon.
Okay.
So because that way you
Esteban Ocon.
Yeah, Esteban. Thank you.
Okay, I was like, who's Alex Ocon?
Albon.
Esteban Ocon.
Sorry about that.
No, that's fine.
And so that way you'd have kind of a seasoned hand on the team.
Mm-hmm.
But to go from this performance where you're going like sworn enemies from years ago and somewhat reliable drivers who end up having an awesome year,
right,
and building a lot of momentum, to kind of having to start fresh with brand new faces, it's rough. It is rough.
Well,
but again, it's Oliver Behrman, and ideally someone who's been around.
And I want to talk about the F1 teams, but let's talk about Oliver Behrman real quick.
Sure.
He's on the list to discuss. Man, after watching like Daniel Ricciardo, right? You put him in a car last year and he does great. Put him in the same team, different car this year, and it's just not breaking his way.
Sure.
Ollie Behrman came in, warmed up, ready to go, had a great race in a Ferrari.
Yeah.
But he has more points in Formula One than he does Formula 2. or he's at least close. I think that was the trivia from earlier. And now he's going to a Haas, and I understand that Haas is doing better. But do you think he's going to get whiplash? Like, this is a little bit of speculation, but how well do you think he's actually going to do in a Haas? Do you think he'll be disappointed?
I mean, it depends on the extent of the rule changes, and spec change requirements next year and beyond. Well, is it 26 that
26 is when it starts, but they still the rules change a little bit, but they're completely changing for 26.
Gotcha. I think given the leaps and bounds the other constructors have made in terms of catching up to Red Bull and McLaren, I think he's. It's not going to be as bad as it could be or it would have been in years past for Haas, but I think some of that's inevitable. You're the young, one of the youngest faces in the upcoming year, and you're in a lower tier constructor. There is going to be frustration there. I think he's going to have to reset his expectations. Can he handle the pressure? Absolutely.
Sure.
Is he doing all this prep work? Absolutely. But the reality will have to be, you're an F1 driver who's thrilled to be P6 if you get that high.
Yeah.
As opposed to, I expect to be on the podium every time.
That's a good point. And that'd be expectations for us as audiences as well.
Oh, for sure.
I'm not going to lie. I'm sitting here like, man, here he goes. And everyone gets a little bit of that. He had one race and he got like so many points in Fantasy F1. Like, this is really wonderful. But yeah, he's going to have to start at the, in quotes, bottom from Haas and have whoever his teammate is, kind of show him the ropes and have him learn, not just expect him to walk in and start winning.
No, victory means getting points of any kind on a consistent basis. That's a winning season for Haas.
Agreed.
So if he can reset his expectations accordingly and do the best with the platform he's given, that's a win.
And so whenever you have a brand new team, a brand new driver starts off in one of the bottom teams, his value within the last couple of years has usually been about $4.5 million.
Yeah.
Like, that's around what Logan Sargent, like with Logan Sargent and with Nick DeVries last year when they both started out their rookie years. They were both $4.5 million.
Yeah.
And so assuming, I think he'll probably start a little bit higher than that, but if next year in comes Ollie Behrman for $4.5 million with Haas, that might not be a bad initial value, because as soon as he gets a couple solid races, as soon as Haas is doing great next year, and we'll talk more about this down the road, but if Haas continues this upward trend and they're valued low starting next year, then by all means jump on Ollie Behrman and get him on your F1 team.
Sure. And again, I think the best he can do over probably the next 2 years, 25 and 26, is to show that he is performing to the limitations of his car. Kind of like Lando Norris was doing 2 years ago, where he was like, I can drive better than this, but my car is literally not fast enough. And then then their upgrades just kind of magically worked, and now it's like, oh, he's McLaren all the way again. But he had those moments where it's like, the grass is greener elsewhere, and I can drive better on that grass.
Yeah, not like Nikita Mazepin. Right.
Gunman
Mazepin. I follow you on social media, and he Nikita Mazepin. Yeah. So Mazepin now, who used to be in F1, but now it no longer is.
He switched to the gun.
He switched to the gun sports. Now he's a competitive pistol shooter. So I won't talk crap about him. But I mean, hey, if he's looking to be competitive, he's doing it. But
what a lateral move, though,
right?
And I'm going to show my age here, but every time he comes up in a news article or something, I always just think Marzipan from the old Homestar Runner cartoons. So yes, I'm 40. I was around when the internet was young, and that just cracked me up when you sent me that post.
Yeah, I was like, oh my gosh, he's a competitive shooter. Hopefully he does great. Like, I want positive for him. But he was a driver who he couldn't drive his F1 car to the edge of its ability.
Yeah.
When you're watching, especially if you go into F1, the F1 TV, and you're watching the onboard cameras from this last race, all of the drivers, they're sliding, they're using every drop of their skill.
You're seeing those jolt movements.
Oh, jolt, always,
and it's all intentional, just to keep things in control.
And Marzipan didn't. He just didn't have that level, and I don't have that level of ability, right? But they didn't pay me a whole bunch of money to drive an F1 car.
Sure.
But he just didn't have that. So if Ollie Behrman does show up and he has that natural capability still, And he, like you're saying, he drives his car to the edge of what the Haas is able to, and he's like, "Hey man, I can do more than this. Give me something better."
Yeah,
then maybe Haas makes it better, and we see Haas winning a championship next year or being podium for the championship. I think that would be awesome.
Absolutely,
that would be so sick.
Semi on that note, you know, I'd love to interview would be a sports psychologist for F1 because that's got to be a whole different mindset than any of your other major sporting entities.
True.
Because you're pushing these cars to their limit. You're putting your life on the line every single time you get in that car, and the margin of error is fractions of a hundredth of a second.
That's a good point. We should look for that.
Like when you look at qualifying, there's just such a close grouping between cars, and it's one is a champion and one is the guy who ruined his day.
Yeah,
and they're 2 seconds apart. And
it'd be like swimming, like Olympic swimming, how there are no fractions of a tenth of a hundredth of a millionth of a second apart, or any Olympic sport, right? But as soon as you goof up, you hit the wall at 200 miles an hour.
What does mental health maintenance look like for an F1 driver?
Well, and I'm getting a little bit off topic, going to talking about the world of NASCAR, but that's the reason why Dale Earnhardt Jr. retired.
Is it really?
Concussions.
Okay.
He hit the wall so many times that his brain would slosh when he hit the wall.
Oh, no.
And I watched a documentary about it. It's super interesting. I forget what it's called. But he basically, after a couple of his last wrecks, he had to learn to reuse his hands because he was so badly concussed. And he would hit the wall, and your noodly, ripply brain that's suspended in liquid is suspended inside your head skull still hits your wall. And so that's the reason why he retired, because of concussions from hitting the wall. So, with this, like, imagine having that sort of nerve. And I forget which racer was it, which announcer was it. I forget who it was, but it was again on F1 TV. And he was racing, and it was bad weather, or it was raining, and there was a car as he was coming out of the pits. The car, and I'm just parroting what he had said. A car passed him and was like barely hanging on. And he realized in that moment, he's like, I don't have the nerve to barely hang on. And next thing I know, I'm in the wall. He's like, he would just back it off just a little bit to not quite be there. And he knew that he would never be a champion in racing, because he's not willing to put himself on that, in that situation. And I got a little bit of sidetracked about what we were talking about, which is one of the great things about this podcast. Is we will absolutely talk. Haas, what were we talking about?
We were talking about Haas. We talked about Behrman.
That's it. Behrman doing good things, and next
Russian
year,
gun sports,
okay.
But let's move forward.
We'll move forward with it. So doing teams. So I have had Haas on my team.
Yeah.
And I want to get your take on this, because I did this right before I went off the grid. Now, this is before qualifying, before practices, before all this.
Sure.
I want to know what you think of this setup. So,
all right, so we got Lando and Piastri. So we went full McLaren.
Full McLaren.
Never go full McLaren.
Never go full.
No. Go full McLaren.
Go full McLaren.
I like that. Pierre Gasly, I don't have many feelings. Alpine is kind of a blind spot for me.
He was doing fine.
Until
let's look at him. Look at that. His previous race,
he's generally in the black.
Generally in the black. He was doing so well, and then I get him just for the UK, and he gives me negative 20 points.
And I think the tough part for me with that is, like, he's at cumulative 40 points on the season, and that's after this latest DNF.
Yeah.
And he's still right about the $10 million price point, which just seems like a little bit too much for me. So you got Pierre Gasly, and then you got Hülkenberg and Magnussen. I feel better about Hülkenberg than I do about Magnussen, but generally it's hard to go wrong with Haas. But I like what you did here, because you went full McLaren, and then for your lower dollar, just because between having the constructor and both drivers, you're low on money. So having Haas as your other constructor is a very interesting move, especially since you have both drivers. So I would say high risk, high reward at this point, because Haas is outperforming expectations as a constructor. I think your biggest liability here is Magnussen, because he's feast or famine. And in that he will either amass multiple penalties in a race, or he'll totally again outperform what you would expect from him. Yeah. So what's nice is if you go to the F1 website and your fantasy page, we're far enough in the season now that they've provided a cool chart, like a cool line graph for your teams.
Oh, nice. Really?
At least it's on the mobile one.
Okay. My team.
But that being said, I anticipate, I don't know, or directionally here, if you're going along the x-axis here.
Right.
With that team,
here you go.
You're going to have a lot of this.
Yeah.
You're going to have some high highs and you're going to have some low lows. It's not going to be a steady performer, I don't think.
Yeah, no, I think you're. Oh, yeah, look at this. Here we go. There are my teams. Like all my teams are. Monaco is rough for.
Monaco is rough for
a lot of people. That just stunk. From the United States, Italy, Monaco, that was just rough. And then I hit rock bottom in Canada for my team too.
Yeah.
Dang. Okay.
But so with that, I think that's a very intriguing build.
Yeah, and the reason why, because I wanted like the gist of it was, I believe in McLaren, so I wanted Max McLaren. Now, what else can I do? Well, Haas they're doing better, and Haas's value went up $500,000 each.
Ooh, okay.
So my team went up $1.5 million of spending power from last week to this week.
Gotcha.
So I'm going to ride this Haas improvement, and then maybe as soon as that starts to taper out, get rid of Haas, get rid of Oscar Piastri, go back to 2 strong constructors. Because, for example, right now, after that change, if I wanted to get rid of Haas and get rid of Piastri, I can afford... Actually, let me go back to...
Oh, interesting.
See, I guess I can't afford...
You cannot afford Max because then you can't afford another constructor.
Yeah. But then I could go ahead and get... I can go ahead and get... Let me go back to constructors. I can get Ferrari, I can get Mercedes, and then who else can I get as far as drivers? Oh, I can't quite get...
You got $10.2 million left. Well, do this, though. Drop Pierre Gasly, get a Kick Sauber or Logan, and then see how much money you have left for another good driver.
Oh, that's a good point. So let me go ahead and do a come down.
Because while you're doing that, I will say historically, for middle of the road drivers, I like either of the Haas's, and I really like Yuki Tsunoda, but Yuki's getting expensive because he's being consistent.
And if you can keep him on your team, then you can ride that success.
Because Pierre Gasly, he's $9.9 million. He's gotten you 40 points. Yuki is $10.5 million, but he's at 60. Is it 62 or 68 points? So he's getting you a lot more for the money.
Yeah, he's at 68 points.
Yeah, and so I like this build better, where you have 1 or 2 drivers that again maybe Kick Sauber, not ideal, but now you've got McLaren and Mercedes, which again I think over the past 4 weeks you can make a really strong case for Mercedes is now what we wanted Ferrari to be before.
That's a great way to put it. Completely agree.
And so I will swap out the Ferrari red for the Mercedes mint green there.
Absolutely.
And I'd go McLaren Mercedes all day with Lando, and if I could find a way to so here's a question.
Yeah.
On this build where you got McLaren Mercedes for your constructors, would you opt for Piastri if that could afford you a Mercedes driver, or are you going to stick with Lando and not have a Mercedes?
And my team 1 right now is exactly that. Mercedes and McLaren with Lando Norris.
Right.
Yuki, Esteban, and then both Haas drivers.
Sure.
And then I changed it up for this other build, my team 2 build, which is all McLaren with Haas, because that's all I can afford.
Yes.
And then I have the Sainz, Russell, Ferrari, Mercedes for my team 3.
Right.
And team 3, that's going to be changing because I just don't have faith in... And I mentioned in the last episode, Mercedes and Ferrari are taking points from each other.
Yes.
Okay, from a fantasy perspective, they're taking points. So my idea behind team 3 here was to have both constructors. No matter what, you're always going to get those points. The problem is that you're always going to get mediocre points from both teams.
Correct.
And as soon as you have Red Bull and McLaren have great races, well, now Ferrari and Mercedes are out of the top. I mean, whoever's in the top 3 isn't going to be whoever. If as soon as the top 3 is full, you're going to be stuck with whatever's left.
Sure.
And with Mercedes being so dominant and Ferrari being so just
lackluster,
they're just not getting you the points. I'm definitely going to change my team 3 build to be a Mercedes dominant. Like I'm going to get rid of Sainz. I can work on this right now. We have because it's this weekend, right?
It is.
Get rid of Sainz and add Hamilton. And but the thing is, right now, so now this is Russell, Hamilton, Mercedes, got it. Logan Sargent, Zhou Guanyu, Nico Hülkenberg, got it. And I have Ferrari as the other constructor. As soon as I drop Ferrari,
see, that's the interesting thing, though. If you have Ferrari on there with the remaining build being what it is, all Ferrari is as a constructor for you is insurance against Mercedes not having a great week.
That's a good point.
You know, it's going to, I guess guarantee that because if Mercedes does poorly,
yeah,
Ferrari has to be somewhere in that mix.
True.
And
but here's the killer part. Right here in United Kingdom, Ferrari, who didn't have any DNFs, they got 35 points.
See, that's a great point. That's awfully unimpressive.
Yeah, then let's go down. Let's look at Haas. They got 30. The week before in Austria, Haas got 41. Ferrari got 69. But the week before in Spain, Ferrari got 44.
Haas got 11.
And Haas got 11. So is it a trend upward? I don't know. But if we look only within recency, I don't know if it's you're spending 2.5 times. You're spending time and a half again the money for Ferrari. When would that money be worth?
Ultimately though, you found a way to get all of Mercedes, and having Ferrari as your other constructor is having another solid constructor.
It is.
This is a
Absolutely.
good team. I'm thinking myself into circles here, and ultimately this is a great build. You've got Nico Hülkenberg as one of your cheaper drivers, and you could do so much worse than that.
Yeah.
So as long as Zhou Yu finishes, I'm happy.
Yeah.
And then you got Logan Sargent. But hey, last week he didn't place last. He not only finished the race, but he actually placed above a few people. So
yeah. Yeah.
So
there's my new build for that Team 3. And I wasn't planning on having this be a team building thing, but here's the big question. Do you put your DRS on Russell or Hamilton?
Oh.
Because again, we can't think that you can't blame Russell's DNF on him. He didn't. That wasn't him. That was just his car. That was the thing.
So I've got three arguments in favor of Russell. One, his DNF last week was not his fault. It was an auto issue. It was a car issue. Second, I attribute a lot of Hamilton's win to his long-term experience, and it was a rainy day. You can definitely separate the men from the boys on that one
for sure.
And then third, throughout this season, Russell has outperformed Hamilton.
That's true. Let's take a look because they're roughly tied with points. Let's look at the recency, right? Austria, Spain, Canada, 43, 27, 27 for Russell. 47, 23, 29.
Okay, well,
I mean, but
throughout the season, I would stand by my point.
But no, you're absolutely right. Though,
however, recently Hamilton's on the rise.
But Hamilton, 47 of Hamilton's 221 points came last race.
I appreciate that point.
Yeah, and Russell, this backs you all up, took -9 points last race.
That's a good that's true, and I certainly don't want to detract from Hamilton's status.
No,
as the greatest of all time.
Yeah.
So his victories are not a fluke. So it is true. A huge chunk of his points from the season came last week. But he's also Lewis Hamilton.
He also is Lewis Hamilton. So I agree with you. I'm going to keep my 2X DRS on George Russell.
Okay.
Just because I think it's, at this point, foolish not to. And you can change that up until the very end. So, team number 1 here, it's still McLaren with Mercedes.
I like that a lot.
Yeah. I think with Esteban and Yuki.
And then you've got both Haas drivers. That's solid.
Yeah,
that's a great build.
Perfect. Then the team 2 I have, that's all McLaren, Gasly, and then Haas.
I think my only criticism is that when you have Haas as a constructor, you have a very distinct point ceiling.
Yes. So what can I do to fix that? Do I go because right now, and we can get into that strategy. Actually, let's talk about that strategy right now.
Well, let's do a weird thing here.
Okay.
How many more points as a constructor? How many more fantasy points as a constructor does Aston Martin have than Haas?
Aston Martin has 252.
Okay.
Haas has 185. So about 70.
So
about 70.
As a fantasy driver, I like the Haas drivers better.
Yes.
As a constructor, I might stick Aston Martin in there. Because I'm really happy for Hülkenberg over the last 2 weeks, but it is a notable point that he got P6 for the last 2 weeks. It is not typical.
That's true.
So, and again, maybe there is a trend here of an upward trend of performance here that we can ride, but our 2 points making a constituting a trend isn't the strongest.
And how about this? The reason why we're even discussing this is I wanted Norris and Piastri on the same team.
Yes.
I wanted to have both McLaren drivers.
And I get that.
And to do that, though, it boxed me in. So as soon as I get them with that now, so if as soon as I put not Ferrari, but I put Mercedes back on here, then I can't afford any. I have 8 million. I can't afford that. Let me get rid of all my other secondary drivers.
Can you afford with the cheapest remaining drivers?
Logan, I can't in good conscience put Alex Albon on there.
Why not?
And, because he cost me too many points.
Okay.
I don't know if that's true.
Oh, no, that's fair. I just wanted to hear
yeah, so let's get Joe Gonyu. I'm missing it by like 2 million.
Oh, okay.
So
I would say see what you can do with, again, it's not a sexy pick, but go Aston Martin and then see what quality drivers you could still afford.
So we'll get rid of Mercedes. We'll put Aston Martin on there, not Austin Martin. Like you be saying.
Look at us growing.
I know,
growing
right?
Throughout the season.
And then we put. So let me get rid of. Now I have Bottas,
and you still have 5 million left. You could certainly switch out Sargent for
Sargent.
Get Nico.
Yeah, Nico. There we go.
And then you got 0.6 million left. So that's all McLaren, Nico Hülkenberg, the entirety of Kick Sauber, and then Aston Martin, which is getting points. They're just not all that exciting.
31, 27, 10 in Spain, 38 in Canada, 13. And
maybe you do. Maybe you do stick with Haas this.
Do you think so?
I mean,
because let me add Haas back there. So now I have. As soon as I do have Haas, here, let me just reset this because as soon as I definitely let me get rid of Oscar Piastri just because he broke my heart.
You mean
sorry,
Esteban Ocon? No, I mean
Pierre Gasly. Sorry, yeah. Let me get rid of Pierre Gasly on this team just because he broke my heart. And I'm not superstitious. I'm a little superstitious. He was doing great. I put him on my team, and he gets a DNF. Not saying it's my fault, but I'm not saying it's not my fault. So let me get rid of him there.
Okay.
And we have Hülkenberg. See, but he's up. Magnussen.
You already got him.
We got him. So he's the best guy. Let me just go for season points.
He is because Yuki's 10.5 now, and
Joe Gonyu. But that's only because Pierre Gasly got the negative 20 DNF.
Zhou Guanyu's got 46 on the season. So I mean, again, he's $2.5 million cheaper, and he's
but again, it's because
we're groaning so much in this episode.
So much,
I hope
right?
you're. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, if you're still listeing to this, like, thank you. But
this is one to watch because this is just us staring at a screen that we will have up for you. But
see, so I just don't know what the right way is, and let's look back. Let's look back at the cool graph that you showed us. How about that?
Let's do that.
So my team 2, everybody dropped.
Yes.
And then team 2 is pink. See, they did even worse in Canada. But then they jumped up for the last. So I'm on the positive trend. I might. So here's another way to look at it. Let's look at leagues real quick. Let's look at the global leagues because this is what is kind of driving my whole.
I'm a little lost in terms of why we're taking the 25,000 foot view when we're trying to decide between Zhou Guanyu and Pierre Gasly. What is this going to tell us?
So here's what it's going to tell us. How much risk we should take.
Okay.
Because if you look at my team 3 is ranked 47,000. So they are right at the bottom of the top 2%.
Okay.
Team 2 is 36,000, ranked 36,000. Team 1 is ranked 18,000. So team 1, I want to keep them stable. I don't want to do anything too crazy. Team 3, we've already worked. Team 2, like I want to, I'm willing to take a little bit more risk on them because they were my team 2 is ranked. They finished. Sorry, this is team. Where am I on?
You're on team 1 right now.
There you go. Here, let's go back. Oh, I just clicked on the league. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So what I'm trying to say is I want to, let's go to British Grand Prix. My team 1 was ranked 140,000. Team 2 was ranked 399,000. Team 3 was ranked 1,996,000 in the British Grand Prix. So completely changed Team 3 because whatever did, the points weren't working out.
For sure.
Team 2, I can go ahead and do some changes on them, but how risky do I want to get? And right now, keeping Haas on the team is a very high-risk maneuver.
It is. Okay, so let's look at Haas the last 3 weeks. Let's look at Aston Martin the last 3 weeks.
So Haas, the last 3 weeks, 30, 41, 11.
Okay.
Now let's go look at
Constructor, where we go, Aston Martin,
31,
27, 10.
They're pretty close.
Neck and neck.
Then I would go Haas, because you're going to double up on points since you have the other two drivers. So you have two complete teams on this build, which is kind of cool.
Okay.
So yeah do that. Then, go 2x Lando Norris.
Yep.
And honestly, keep Pierre Gasly. He's consistent enough. You can afford him. You can't afford any, significantly better with the money you have left.
And the last, unless I'm wrong, he got the DNF because he bumped somebody at the start, didn't he? Isn't that what happened?
Honestly, I don't remember.
Let me check and see. Oh, yeah, no, that's fine. Let me go race results. And Pierre Gasly, George Russell, Joe Gonyu. So he got 0 laps. I think he and again, I'm not sure if he was one whose gearbox went out. One of them, their gearbox went out at like the start of the race, and the other they got into some bumping and grinding, and that didn't work out. But anyway, it doesn't matter. Okay, so that's the build.
All right,
so we're gonna keep it that way.
I like it.
Okay, so there's that, and I do enjoy the big picture view, because it gives us a chance to kind of see where we're at and stand. Because right now we're nearing the end of the time, so I want to keep it consistent for the next couple races just to see where the overall teams go.
Yeah,
but we're nearing the end of our ability to make big decisions and still have them work out.
Sure,
you know what I'm saying? And
were you recording the screen at any
Nope,
point?
forgot all about that.
Oh, dang.
So,
okay.
Sorry, everybody, you're not going to get a chance to see the screen. You said, I'm like, yeah, I'm recording the screen. And then I'm like, oh, never mind.
That's
I
right.
didn't.
We'll take a screenshot of the screen, so then you can see what we ended up with, and you can use that as a reference point as we've been talking and looking that direction the entire time. Our computer screen's over here. So.
Okay, so let's see what else we have to talk about, because I know we hit up pretty much.
We hit a lot.
We hit a lot.
So this weekend is in Hungary.
Yes.
I don't know any of the history of this one, but
no, I would say, especially with how dynamic things have been, that Hungary, this race is not a race to do drastic changes, because everyone's had a race. Everyone's had a week to chill out, a week to reset. At least for me, I've done the little changes we saw here, but I'm just going to kind of let it ride for a race or two.
Okay.
And just kind of see how well everybody's doing.
I like it. Yeah. I think the thing to watch for this week is, does Ferrari turn things back around in the wake of everyone improving their performance dramatically? Mm-hmm. Does Ferrari get on that train, or have they lost their window of being competitive? Because right now they still got the number 2 and number 3 driver as far as points go, but that lead is cutting down significantly week by week. I'm sorry, not number 2 and number 3. They have the number 3 and the number 4. Right now it goes Max, Lando Norris, Charles Leclerc, Carlos Sainz, and then Oscar Piastri.
Yep.
And then you got Perez right outside of that. But then Mercedes is on their way
and
up.
They're climbing. They're climbing. And
the thing to watch for is, will Ferrari come back? Will Mercedes continue to be a threat? And I think they will.
Mm-hmm. I think so. And I'm going to put my head in the lion's mouth here. Max Verstappen. Dude, if Max Verstappen's qualifying not on the pole still, I think we've pretty much established to divest of Max Verstappen because he's just so expensive. And last week I was like, we don't have him on our fantasy team. He's just so expensive.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But, again, as soon as he isn't qualifying, as soon as he's not qualifying P1 and Mercedes is, and as soon as there's no rain and McLaren and Mercedes are fighting and Max are all fighting for P1, then are we seeing the end of... Now Max is just a really, really great, wonderful driver. I think A's of before are gone.
I think we're there. I think his P2 last week is way more of an accomplishment than when he's getting P1 by 17 seconds. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That last week was a much more impressive Last week was a much more impressive second place.
Yes.
Than previous victories.
Yeah, and that was definitely a team effort.
And then you go the week before that, where he sabotaged himself a little bit trying to maintain first and ended up with 5th.
Yeah.
I think you're going to see a lot more any Max Verstappen victory for the remainder of this season is going to be hard fought. It's not going to be a foregone conclusion. And but that's, you know what? That makes the rest of this season fantastic.
Very true.
Because seeing so many
different Grand Prix winners this season.
There's been 5 so far.
Has it been 5?
Yep, 5 Grand Prix winners, and I think, unless I'm miscounting, but yeah, I think there should be 5 Grand Prix winners.
I thought we were at 6 because you got Carlos Sainz.
Yep.
Did Charles Leclerc win one? No, he hasn't. I don't think this year.
So.
But yeah, Carlos Sainz, Max Verstappen, Lando Norris, George Russell, Lewis Hamilton. I thought there was one other one, but I might be wrong.
Verstappen, Sainz.
Oh, Charles Leclerc did have one.
Oh, he did. Lando Norris.
It was Monaco.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So we have had 6.
There we go.
So 2 Ferraris, 2 Mercedes, 1 McLaren, and 1 Red Bull because Max Verstappen is Red Bull.
Is Red Bull. Max Verstappen equals Red Bull. Man, I love it.
Final question I have is I'm sorry. Actually, I have 2 more questions. Okay. One, how on the hot seat is Daniel Ricciardo? He'd had a couple decent weeks, but this week he was outperformed by Yuki Tsunoda again.
He was,
and Yuki's got his seat next year.
Do I think Daniel Ricciardo's in the hot seat for next year? Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay.
Do I think they're going to pull him halfway through the season? No, I don't think he's doing that bad.
Oh, I agree with you there.
Do I think? Do I think he'll be racing for VCARB next year? No.
Interesting.
Do I think he will be racing for somebody else? He could. I think he brings a lot of experience. He's very charismatic. He's a PR, fantasy.
Oh, sure.
And I think he's doing well. My guess would be that VCARB is just not as competitive of a car this year as they had hoped.
Okay.
And I think we enjoy, as being talking heads, we love questioning whether or not he's going to be around next year.
Uh-huh.
I don't think he'll be with VCARB. I think they'll go a different direction, but I could see another team scooping him up cheap.
That makes sense.
And the reason being is because next year is like a stopgap. Next year is the last year they're with this, and then they completely rechange the formula of Formula One for 2026. I think he won't have VCARB, but he'll be with somebody for next year. And if he doesn't make it happen then whenever all the teams control out, delete, and reintroduce new cars, they're going to do it with new drivers.
Interesting.
That's my guess. Again, I'm just armchair quarterbacking like everybody else.
That's a very insightful answer. Related, if Liam Lawson does not land the VCARB seat next year, is there a place for him on another constructor?
I would be astonished. First off, if Red Bull doesn't give him a VCARB seat, Liam Lawson's sitting there on the wings just waiting.
Yeah.
And he's waiting for a reason. I don't know what that reason is, and maybe there's a lot. I promise there's a lot about F1 politics I don't get.
Sure.
He's here for a reason. And as soon as VCARB brings in somebody else from Formula 2 or brings in another guy from another team and moves him ahead of Liam Lawson, I would take that as a pretty strong vote of no confidence.
Oh, sure.
But I think, would somebody else scoop him up? I think they should.
I would agree.
I think that he absolutely should. He shouldn't be beholden to, was it the saying one of my commanding officers said that his father said was that, loyalty is, like, in this world we live in now, loyalty is overrated. Like, you do what you can do for you. And as soon as Liam Lawson is spending an entire season standing by after showing what he could do last season, and now he's a reserve driver of all this season, great.
Yeah. No.
You give him a shot. I would love to see Liam Lawson. I think he'd do wonderful.
Oh, me too. And, similarly, I think it was the great Dwight Schrute who said, loyalty is one of my strongest traits, and I will go wherever they value loyalty the most.
Yes, I forgot about that.
No, that's an early office season, but
that's awesome.
It's a good one.
All right, that's the thing. Okay, do you have any parting shots, saved rounds, anything like that?
No, we're going to wrap it up. Hey, thanks for bearing with us, and sorry for the absence last week, and we will see you after Hungary. Go ahead and do the whole like and subscribe thing, and leave us a good review, please. And thanks for hanging out.
Thanks a lot. Cheers.
All right, bye.